The colony ship Endurance drifted through the cold darkness of space like a wounded animal. Inside its metal walls, 12,000 humans waited to die. The ship's reactor had failed 3 days ago, and now the lights were growing dim. The air was getting thin. The cold was creeping in. Commander Jack Harmon stood on the bridge and stared at the endless black void through the window. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had led these people away from Earth with promises of a new home, a new beginning. Now he could only watch as that dream slowly died around him. "How long do we have?" he asked his chief engineer. The young woman checked her tablet with shaking hands. "Maybe 40 hours, sir. The backup power is failing. After that, life support goes down completely." Jack nodded slowly. He had already sent distress signals in every direction, but they were in the empty space between stars. No human ship could reach them in time. No human ship was even close. He walked through the ship that night, looking at the faces of his people. Families huddled together under blankets. Children slept in their parents' arms, not knowing that they might never wake up. Old people sat quietly, accepting what was coming. Young couples held hands and whispered to each other in the dark. Jack felt the weight of all their lives on his shoulders. He had failed them. He had brought them out here to die in the cold and the dark, far from the warm sun of Earth. On the second day, something appeared on their sensors. At first, the crew thought it was a mistake. Then they thought it might be debris from some ancient wreck. But as it grew closer, they realized it was a ship, an alien ship. The vessel was unlike anything humans had ever seen. It was shaped like a great spiral shell, with soft lights glowing along its surface. It moved through space with a gentle grace that seemed almost alive. Jack ordered his crew to prepare for anything. They had no weapons, no way to defend themselves. If these aliens wanted to harm them, there was nothing they could do to stop it. But the aliens did not attack. Instead, they sent a message. The translation was rough and broken, but the meaning was clear. They were asking if the humans needed help. Jack's hands trembled as he recorded his response. "Yes," he said. "Yes, they needed help. They were dying." Within an hour, a small shuttle detached from the alien ship and docked with the Endurance. The airlock opened, and Jack came face to face with a being from another world for the first time in human history. The alien was tall and thin, with a body covered in smooth plates that looked like dark blue armor. It had 4 arms and 2 legs, and its head was crowned with long antennae that moved constantly, sensing the air. Its eyes were large and compound like those of an insect, but somehow they seemed kind. The alien introduced itself as an ambassador of the collective. It spoke through a small device that translated its clicking language into human words. "We found your signal," said. "We came as fast as we could. Your ship is damaged." Jack explained their situation. The reactor failure, the failing life support, the 40 hours they had left before everyone on board would suffocate or freeze. Listened carefully, its antennae waving slowly. When Jack finished, the alien was quiet for a long moment. "We can help you," finally said, "but it will cost us greatly." The ship, explained, was on an important mission of its own. They were carrying rare medical supplies to one of their colony worlds, where a sickness was spreading among their people. They had just enough fuel to complete their journey and return home. If they used their fuel to push the Endurance toward a nearby habitable world, they would not have enough to complete their own mission. Their people would suffer. Some might die. Jack felt his heart sink. He could not ask these strangers to sacrifice their own people for humans they had never met. It was too much. It was not fair. "We cannot ask you to do this," he said. "Your own people need you." His antennae rose in what Jack would later learn was a smile. "You did not ask," the alien said. "We are offering. Life is precious, Commander, all life. Your people are dying. We can save them. The choice is simple." For 3 weeks, the ship pushed the Endurance through space. The aliens shared their food, their water, their medicine. They worked alongside human engineers to keep the failing systems running just a little longer. They taught the humans songs from there to keep their spirits up during the long, dark journey. When they finally reached the habitable world, a green and blue planet with breathable air and clean water, the humans wept with joy. They had survived. Against all odds, they had survived. Jack stood on the surface of their new home and watched the shuttle prepare to leave. The aliens had given humanity everything they had. Now they were leaving, facing a long and uncertain journey home with empty fuel tanks and delayed medicine. "How can we ever repay you?" Jack asked. His voice was thick with emotion. Placed one of its 4 hands gently on Jack's shoulder. "You owe us nothing," the alien said. "We helped because we could. That is enough." But Jack shook his head. He dropped to one knee in front of the alien ambassador in the old human gesture of respect and oath. Around him, other humans did the same. Thousands of people, kneeling in the grass of their new world, facing the beings who had saved them. "We will remember this," Jack said, his voice carried across the silent crowd. "Humanity will never forget what you have done for us. One day we will repay this debt. I swear it on my life, on the lives of everyone here, on the lives of all the generations that will come after us. We will remember, and we will repay." His compound eyes seemed to shimmer in the sunlight. "We believe you," the alien said simply. "Goodbye, Commander, live well." They left that day. The humans built their colony and named it Promise, and true to Jack's word, they remembered. They wrote the story of the into their history books, their songs, their very culture. Every human child learned about the gentle aliens who had sacrificed so much for strangers. 300 years passed. Humanity grew and spread across the stars, becoming a powerful civilization. They built great ships and conquered challenges that would have crushed lesser species. They became known throughout the galaxy as fierce and stubborn and proud. But they never forgot, not for a single day, not for a single moment. They were just waiting for the chance to repay what they owed. The Dominion came without warning, like a storm rising from a clear sky. One day they were living in peace, tending their gardens and writing their poetry. The next day, their worlds were burning. There were reptilian creatures, tall and covered in thick gray scales. Their eyes were yellow and cold, like the eyes of snakes. They had conquered dozens of species across the galaxy, destroying some completely and enslaving others. They believed that only the strong deserved to exist. The weak were meant to serve or die. When they discovered the collective, they saw easy prey. They had no real military. They had no weapons of war. They were scholars and philosophers who believed that all conflicts could be solved through understanding and discussion. They did not come to discuss. Their warships descended on colonies like hungry wolves falling upon sheep. They burned cities that had stood for thousands of years. They destroyed libraries filled with ancient knowledge. They killed without mercy and without purpose, simply because they could. Ambassador watched her civilization crumble from the deck of a refugee ship. She was old now, her carapace cracked and faded with age. She had lived for nearly 400 years, long enough to remember the day she had helped the humans of the Endurance. She had been young then, full of hope and idealism. Now she felt only despair. In 3 months, they lost 7 of their 12. Billions of her people were dead or scattered. The collective's leadership had been killed when they bombarded the capital city from orbit. Was one of the last surviving members of the High Council. She sent messages to every species she could reach, begging for help. The responses were always the same. "We are sorry. We cannot risk war with the Dominion. We hope you survive." No one wanted to anger no one wanted to become their next target. The galaxy watched the die and did nothing. Sat alone in her small cabin and thought about her options. Her people were being exterminated. No one would help them. The situation seemed hopeless. Then she remembered a promise made 300 years ago. A human commander, kneeling in the grass of a new world, swearing that his species would never forget what they had done for them. It was a thin hope. The humans had been weak and few back then. She had heard that they had grown powerful since, but she did not know if they would honor such an old promise. Humans lived short lives. The ones who had sworn that oath were long dead. Why would their descendants care about a debt from ancient history? But she had no other options, so she set a course for Earth. The journey took 2 weeks, spent most of that time in her cabin, watching news reports of her people's suffering. Another colony had fallen. Another million were dead. She wept until she had no more tears left. When her ship finally entered the Sol system, human patrol vessels immediately surrounded her. Their ships were sleek and powerful, bristling with weapons. They looked nothing like the fragile colony vessel she had helped so long ago. A human voice came through her communications system, asking her to identify herself and state her purpose. Took a deep breath. "I am ambassador of the collective," she said. "I have come to ask for help." There was a long pause. Then the human spoke again, and this time his voice was different, softer, almost reverent. "Ambassador," he said, "we know who you are. We have been waiting for you. Please follow us to Earth. You are honored here." Did not understand what he meant, but she followed the escort ships toward the blue planet ahead. When she landed at the main spaceport, she expected to be met by some minor official who would take her to fill out forms and wait in line like any other foreign visitor. That was how most species treated refugees. Instead, she found Captain Emma Hart waiting for her on the landing platform. Emma was a woman in her 40s, with short brown hair and sharp green eyes. She wore the formal dress uniform of the United Earth Navy, decorated with medals and ribbons. Behind her stood 200 Marines in perfect formation, their armor polished until it gleamed. As stepped off her ship, Emma snapped to attention and saluted. Every Marine behind her did the same. "Ambassador," Emma said, her voice clear and strong. "On behalf of the United Earth Government, the Navy, and all of humanity, I welcome you to our world. It is our greatest honor to meet you." Antennae trembled with confusion. "I do not understand," she said. "How do you know who I am?" Emma smiled. It was a warm smile, but there was something fierce behind it. "Every human child learns your name, Ambassador. You are in our history books, our songs, our stories. You are the one who saved the Endurance. You are the one who showed us what true kindness looks like." She stepped forward and took ancient claw gently in her hand. "We have been watching your space for decades, Ambassador. We saw the Dominion attack. We saw your people suffer. We have been preparing our response since the first day." Felt her heart's beating faster. "Preparing? I do not understand. I have not asked for anything yet." Emma's smile grew wider and now could see the steel in her eyes. "You didn't need to ask. We knew you would come eventually, and we wanted to be ready when you did." She turned and gestured toward the sky. "Look up, Ambassador." Raised her eyes to the heavens, and what she saw made her gasp. Ships, hundreds of ships, filling the sky above Earth. Warships of every size, their hulls dark and dangerous, their weapons gleaming in the sunlight. They moved in perfect formation, a display of military power unlike anything had ever seen. 412 vessels, Emma said quietly. "The largest fleet humanity has ever assembled. Soldiers from every human world, volunteers who begged for the chance to serve. We have been building toward this moment for 3 centuries, Ambassador." Tears began to flow from his compound eyes. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you do this for us?" Emma's expression softened. She reached out and gently wiped a tear from the old ambassador's face. "Because you helped us once," she said simply. "You found us dying in the dark and you gave everything you had to save us. You asked for nothing in return. You expected nothing. You just helped because it was right." She straightened up and squared her shoulders. "Humanity never forgets a debt, Ambassador, and we always repay what we owe. The Dominion of is about to learn what it means to threaten our friends." Could not speak. She could only stand there, trembling, as 300 years of hope and despair crashed together in her ancient hearts. The humans had remembered. After all this time, they had remembered. And now they were going to war for her people. The news spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Humanity was going to war against the dominion of, not for territory, not for resources, not for power. They were going to war because of a debt owed to a dying species. The other civilizations watched in disbelief. This made no sense to them. They had nothing to offer. They were weak, broken, almost destroyed. Why would the humans risk so much for so little gain? They did not understand. They could not understand. They did not know what it meant to be human. Admiral Cole stood on the bridge of the carrier Retribution and watched his fleet move into formation. He was a big man with a shaved head and dark skin, and his face was covered with scars from battles fought long ago. He had served in the Navy for 30 years, and he had never seen anything like this. Every ship in the fleet had been repainted with a special symbol on its hull. It was the image of a spiral shell, the shape of the vessel that had saved the Endurance 3 centuries ago. The humans called it the Mark of Honor, and every soldier in the fleet wore it proudly. Commander Wells walked up beside him, her tablet filled with reports and updates. She was his executive officer, a small woman with red hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Final count is in, sir," she said. 412 warships, 2 million soldiers, enough supplies for a 6-month campaign. Nodded slowly, and the enemy. His face tightened. Intelligence estimates the Dominion has over 1,200 ships in space, 3 times our number, plus ground forces on the occupied worlds. 1,200, repeated. He did not sound worried. He sounded thoughtful, like a chess player studying the board. Looked at him with concern in her eyes. "Sir, I have to ask, do you really think we can win this?" Turned to face her. There was something in his expression that she had never seen before. It was not confidence exactly. It was something deeper, something almost sacred. "Let me tell you a story, Commander," he said. "When I was a boy, my grandmother used to tell me about the Endurance. She would describe how those people felt, drifting in the darkness, waiting to die. She would describe the moment when the ship appeared on their sensors, and she would describe the choice those aliens made, giving up everything to save strangers they had never met." He turned back to the window, watching his fleet spread across the stars. "My grandmother's grandmother was on that ship. She was one of the 12,000 people they saved. I exist because of them. My family exists because of them. Millions of humans across dozens of worlds exist because a group of aliens decided that life was more important than convenience." He straightened his shoulders. "So you ask if I think we can win. I will tell you what I know for certain. I know that every person in this fleet understands why we are here. I know that they will fight with everything they have, not because they were ordered to, but because they believe in what we are doing. And I know that the Dominion has never faced an enemy like that before." Was quiet for a moment, then she nodded. "I understand, sir." Smiled. It was a hard smile, the smile of a warrior preparing for battle. "Good. Now let's go remind the galaxy what happens when you threaten humanity's friends." The fleet jumped into space 3 days later. They emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, their weapons charged and ready. The Dominion forces were waiting for them, their ships arranged in a massive defensive line. The commander sent a message demanding the humans withdraw immediately. He boasted about all the species the Dominion had conquered. He described in detail what would happen to Earth if the humans did not turn back. He thought his threats would frighten them. Admiral Cole's response was short. "We're humanity," he said. "Come and find out." They did not understand. They had conquered dozens of species. They had destroyed civilizations that were older and more advanced than humanity. They believed themselves to be the greatest warriors in the galaxy. They were wrong. Across the human fleet, soldiers gathered in their quarters and shared stories about They sang old songs written centuries ago about the kindness of the gentle aliens. They spoke the names of their ancestors who had been saved by that kindness. In the mess halls, cooks prepared special meals, the same foods that the early colonists had eaten on their new world. Chaplains of every faith held services, praying for victory and protection. Officers walked among their troops, offering encouragement and listening to concerns. There was fear, of course. Only a fool would face battle without fear, but stronger than the fear was something else, something that burned in every human heart like a fire that could not be put out. They were fighting for something real, something pure. They were repaying a debt that their species had carried for 300 years. They were proving that humanity never forgot, never abandoned their friends, never turned their backs on those who had helped them. Lieutenant Sam Parker sat in the cockpit of his fighter and checked his weapons for the 10th time. He was young, barely 25, with blonde hair and blue eyes. He had joined the Navy because he wanted to see the stars. He had never expected to be part of something like this. His wingman's voice crackled through his helmet. "You ready for this, Sam?" Sam looked out at the Dominion fleet, thousands of enemy ships waiting to kill him. His hands were steady on the controls. His heart was calm. "My great-great-great-grandmother was on the Endurance," he said quietly. "She wrote a diary about how they sang songs to keep the children from being scared during the journey. She said their voices sounded like wind chimes." He took a deep breath. "I'm going to make sure those songs keep being sung. I'm ready." Across the fleet, similar conversations were happening. Humans sharing their connection to the old debt. Humans reminding each other why they were here. Humans preparing to fight and die for an alien species that had shown them kindness 3 centuries ago. The Dominion had conquered many worlds. They had defeated many enemies, but they had never faced anything like this. They were about to learn what it meant to threaten the friends of humanity. Admiral Cole's voice echoed through every ship in the fleet. "All hands, this is the Admiral. The enemy is ahead of us. Our friends are behind us. Today we repay what we owe. Today we show the galaxy what humanity is made of." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was like thunder. "All ships advance, for the Endurance, for humanity." The fleet surged forward like a wave of iron and fire, rushing toward the enemy with a fury that would shake the stars themselves. The battle for the soul of humanity had begun. The Battle of Ara Prime began at dawn local time. The sun was rising over a world that had been conquered and burned, a world where millions of still hid in the ruins, waiting for death or rescue. They got rescue. They got it in a way that nobody in the galaxy had ever seen before. The Dominion commander, a grizzled old named, watched the human fleet approach on his tactical display. He was confident. His forces outnumbered the humans 3-1. His ships were larger and more powerful. He had crushed bigger fleets than this one. He ordered his forces to hold formation and wait. Let the humans come to them. Let them break themselves against the Dominion's superior numbers. It was the last mistake he ever made. The human fleet did not slow down as it approached. It did not spread out into defensive positions. It did not try to outmaneuver the enemy or find weak points in their formation. Instead, it accelerated. The ships pushed their engines to maximum power and charged directly at the center of the Dominion line like a spear aimed at the heart. Watched in disbelief. This was not how space battles were fought. This was not how any species fought. This was madness. Lieutenant Sam Parker was in the first wave of fighters that hit the enemy fleet. His squadron's mission was simple but suicidal. They were to punch a hole through the Dominion's defensive screen so the larger ships could follow. Plasma fire filled the space around him. Ships exploded on all sides. His wingman died in the first 30 seconds, his fighter torn apart by enemy weapons. Sam did not slow down. He did not turn back. He pushed his fighter forward, weaving through the chaos, his weapons blazing. A cruiser loomed ahead of him, its guns tracking his tiny ship. Sam flew directly at it, his finger pressed down on the firing trigger. His weapons ripped into the cruiser's hull, tearing open fuel lines and ammunition storage. The cruiser exploded just as Sam's fighter passed through the expanding fireball. The blast caught his ship and sent it spinning. Warning lights flashed everywhere. His left arm was broken, maybe worse. He did not care. He used his right hand to regain control, pulled his fighter out of the spin, and kept flying toward the enemy command ship. Elsewhere in the battle, Commander Tors watched her frigate die around her. Dominion weapons had torn through the hull, killing half her crew and destroying most of her systems. The ship was crippled, unable to fight, unable to flee. But it could still move, and ahead of her was an enemy carrier, launching wave after wave of fighters against the human fleet. Made her choice in less than a second. "All hands prepare for impact," she announced over the ship's speakers. "We're going to make our deaths count." She aimed her dying frigate at the carrier's open hangar bay and pushed the engines to full power. The crash was tremendous. The frigate plowed through the hangar doors and into the belly of the carrier, crushing fighters and equipment and soldiers beneath its broken hull. The ship finally stopped when it hit the carrier's internal structure, wedged deep inside the enemy vessel like a splinter in flesh. Pulled herself from the wreckage. Around her, other survivors were doing the same. They were battered and bleeding, but they were alive, and they were inside an enemy ship. She pulled out her sidearm and looked at her people. "Anyone who can walk, follow me. We're going to take this ship." 53 humans, most of them wounded, charged through the corridors of the carrier. They fought with guns and knives and bare hands. They cleared room after room, deck after deck, killing every enemy they found. 3 hours later, Tors stood on the bridge of the captured carrier and broadcast a message to the human fleet. "This is Commander Tors. The carrier is ours, turning its guns on the enemy now." The Dominion could not believe what was happening. Their soldiers were trained from birth to fight. They had conquered species far more warlike than humans, but they had never faced an enemy that fought like this. Private First Class was 19 years old. He had joined the Marines because he wanted to help people and see new worlds. Now he stood in a narrow corridor on a Dominion battleship, facing 30 enemy soldiers with nothing but his rifle and his determination. His squad had been sent to secure the engineering section. Most of them were dead. The rest were trapped behind him, wounded and unable to fight. If he fell back, the enemy would kill them all. So he did not fall back. For 45 minutes held that corridor. He fired until his rifle overheated, then grabbed a fallen enemy's weapon and kept firing. When he ran out of ammunition, he used his combat knife. When the knife broke, he used his fists. The soldiers were bigger than him, stronger than him, better armed than him, but they could not pass. Every time they tried, he threw them back. His armor was cracked. His body was covered in blood, most of it his own, but he would not stop. When the reinforcements finally arrived, they found still standing in the corridor, surrounded by enemy bodies. He was barely conscious, swaying on his feet, but he had not taken a single step backward. The medic who treated him asked how he had done it. How had he found the strength to fight for so long against such odds? His answer was simple. "The saved my people once," he said through broken teeth. "It's our turn now." The battle lasted 18 hours. When it was over, the Dominion fleet had been destroyed. Not defeated, not pushed back, destroyed. Over 1,000 enemy ships were nothing but wreckage drifting in the void. The human fleet had paid a terrible price. Nearly a third of their ships were gone. Thousands of soldiers were dead. Many more were wounded. But they had won. Admiral Cole stood on the bridge of the Retribution and surveyed the battlefield. His ship was damaged by enemy fire but still flying, still fighting. Commander Wells stood beside him, her face pale with exhaustion. "Sir, we're receiving reports from the surface. The civilians are coming out of hiding. They're singing, sir. They're singing songs of thanks." Closed his eyes and let out a long breath. He thought about his grandmother and her stories. He thought about the promise made 3 centuries ago. He thought about all the humans who had died today, giving their lives for an ancient debt. "Start landing parties," he said quietly. "Get medical teams and supplies to the surface. These people have suffered enough." He opened his eyes and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, more Dominion forces were waiting. More battles would have to be fought. But for now, for this moment, humanity had done what it had promised to do. They had come for their friends. They had repaid what they owed. The galaxy would never forget what they had seen today. The humans fought like demons. They accepted any cost, refused any compromise, and did not stop until their enemy was destroyed. And they had done it all for a debt owed to aliens who had helped them 300 years ago. Humanity was more than just warriors. They were something the galaxy had never seen before. They were people who kept their promises. The war lasted 3 more months after the Battle of Ara Prime. The Dominion threw everything they had at the human fleet, desperate to stop the advancing enemy. It made no difference. World by world, system by system, humanity drove them back. Every colony the Dominion had taken was liberated. Every prisoner was rescued. Every soldier who refused to surrender was destroyed without mercy. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as one of the most feared empires in known space was torn apart by a species that had been nothing but refugees 3 centuries ago. When it was finally over, when the last Dominion fortress had fallen and the last warship had been destroyed, the humans did something that shocked the galaxy even more than their victory. They went home. They did not claim territory. They did not demand payment or tribute. They did not establish military bases or install puppet governments. They simply handed control of every liberated world back to them and began the long journey back to their own space. But before they left, Admiral Cole had one final duty to perform. Ambassador stood on the surface of her for the first time in over a year. The planet was by war. The great cities were in ruins. The ancient forests had been burned, but it was still home. She was old, so very old, and the journey had taken everything out of her. Her carapace was cracked in a dozen places. Her movements were slow and painful, but when she saw what was waiting for her, she forgot all of that. Thousands of human soldiers stood in rows across the landing field. They were not in formation. They were not standing at attention. They were on their knees, heads bowed, in the traditional posture of deep respect and gratitude. Cole walked toward her, his uniform dusty and worn from months of combat. Behind him came his officers and crew, all of them carrying the weight of the war they had just fought. Ambassador said, his voice gentle, "Welcome home." Could not speak. She could only stare at the thousands of humans kneeling before her, these fierce warriors who had crossed the galaxy and fought and died for her people. "I do not understand," she finally whispered. "We did so little for you. We helped one ship, saved one group of people. How can you justify all of this? The ships you lost, the soldiers who died. How can this be a fair exchange?" Smiled. It was a soft smile, without any of the hardness that had marked him during the war. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, worn book. "This belonged to my grandmother," he said. "She inherited it from her grandmother, who was a child on the Endurance. It's a diary, Ambassador, written during the 3 weeks when your people pushed our ship to safety." He opened it carefully, the old pages fragile in his hands. She wrote about everything. The fear she felt when the reactor failed, the joy when your ship appeared, the kindness your people showed during the journey. He turned to a page near the end and read aloud. "Today, they taught us a song about the stars. They sang it for the children to help them sleep. Their voices sound like wind chimes. When I am grown, I will make sure everyone remembers how beautiful their singing is." closed the book and looked at with tears in his eyes. She kept that promise. She taught the song to her children and they taught it to theirs. It spread across human space. Now every human child learns to sing that song. He took her ancient claw in his hand. You did not just save 12,000 lives, Ambassador. You saved humanity's soul. You showed us what real kindness looked like. You taught us that helping others is its own reward, that life is precious, that strangers deserve compassion. He gestured at the kneeling soldiers around him. These people are not here because they were ordered to be. They are here because they wanted to be. They volunteered for this mission. They fought and died for your people not because of politics or strategy, but because they believed it was right. Because you taught their ancestors that helping others is what makes a species great. His compound eyes overflowed with tears. I never imagined, she said. When I helped your people, I never imagined anything like this. Of course you didn't, said. That's what made it so precious. You expected nothing, you asked for nothing, you just helped because you could. He stepped back and drew himself to attention. Around him, every human soldier rose to their feet and did the same. Ambassador, said, his voice ringing across the field. On behalf of the United Earth Navy, the human species, and all the generations of our people who exist because of your kindness, I declare the debt of the Endurance paid in full. He saluted, and 2 million humans across a dozen worlds saluted with him. Ships in orbit fired ceremonial volleys. Bells rang out from human vessels throughout the system. Stood in the center of it all, an ancient alien surrounded by the species she had helped so long ago. She thought about the choice she had made 300 years ago, the decision to sacrifice her own mission to save a ship full of strangers. She had never regretted that choice, but she had never truly understood its consequences until now. Humanity had carried her gift for 3 centuries. They had nurtured it, protected it, woven it into the very fabric of their civilization. And when the time came, they had returned it 1,000-fold. Some species, she realized, understood something that others did not. They understood that kindness was not a weakness, that compassion was not a limitation, that helping others without expecting reward was the highest form of strength. Humanity understood this. They had taught them, and they had never forgotten. The human fleet began to depart that evening, their ships rising into the darkening sky like stars returning to the heavens. Watched them go, her heart's full of a peace she had not felt in a very long time. Cole stood beside her, the last human to leave the surface. If you ever need us again, he said, we will come. That's not a debt anymore. That's a promise between friends. Reached out and touched his face with her ancient claw, the same gesture of blessing that her ancestors had given to the survivors of the Endurance. Go in peace, Admiral, she said, and know that they will never forget what you have done. We will sing songs about humanity for as long as our species exists. We will tell our children about the fierce, stubborn, wonderful humans who crossed the stars to save us. Smiled, just make sure you teach them that one song, the one about the stars. My grandmother would have liked that. He saluted one final time, then turned and walked toward his shuttle. Watched him go, watched the shuttle rise into the sky and disappear among the stars. She stood alone on the field as darkness fell, surrounded by the ruins of her world and the hope of its future. The war was over. Her people were saved. And she finally understood something that had puzzled her for 300 years. When she had helped the Endurance, she had planted a seed. That seed had grown into something vast and beautiful, a forest of gratitude and honor that had spread across an entire civilization. Humanity never forgot a debt, and they repaid it in ways that shook the very stars. Turned and walked slowly toward the lights of the nearest settlement, where her people were gathering to rebuild. Behind her, the human ships had vanished into the night, returning to their homes across the galaxy. But she knew they would return if needed. She knew that the friendship between their species would last forever. Some debts, she thought, grow with interest. and humanity always paid what they owed.